Alright, so today I want to introduce you to the black banana ball python. The black banana is a pretty interesting combination of genes. It consists of two genes, the banana and the black pastel. And usually when we think of the banana, we think of a really visually dominant gene. If you actually mix it in with other genes, a lot of times you'll end up with a banana looking snake. You can make some really amazing combinations with the banana, but a lot of times it's really visually dominant. And some people get a little bit confused when we talk about visually dominant. Some people are thinking it's genetics. So let me tell you, it's completely different than the dominant, co-dominant, or recessive. And I'd say probably the number one visually dominant gene is actually the albino. So a lot of times when you mix albino with other genes, you'll get a yellow and white snake. As far as a combination, it's extremely visually dominant. And pretty much right under the albino is the banana. Not a lot of things can actually break through the banana, but one of them that can really have a significant influence as far as the color of the banana combinations is the black pastel. It kind of takes the banana to the dark side of ball pythons, which is pretty awesome. So today I want to jump over to the internet and I want to show you the potential of the black banana ball python. Alright, so I want to jump over here on Morphmarket.com and I want to start with the banana. This is what a banana looks like. And when it comes to the banana, I'd say it's a little bit complicated as far as the genetics. Probably one of the most complicated genes in all of ball pythons. And at first glance, it looks kind of like a type of albino. Maybe something like a rainbow or an ultramel or something like that. But it's actually a co-dominant gene instead of recessive, which is one of the things I really like about banana. So if you actually take this and breed it to something else, half the offspring come out as bananas or banana combinations. And when I first got into ball pythons, one of the very first snakes that I bought was a coral glow. And come to find out, the coral glows and bananas, a lot of people think they're exactly the same gene. They both are almost exactly the same looking as a hatchling, and they kind of transform into a completely different snake when they get older. A lot of times they'll get a lot of freckles and completely transform from when they're a hatchling. Usually when they're a hatchling, they have a lot of these purples in there, kind of like a lavender purple background with a lot of oranges in there. And a lot of times when you actually grow them up and mature them, they reach about, I've actually seen them about 800 grams where they start transforming into almost a two-tone yellow color with a lot of freckles. It looks like a completely different snake, which is kind of crazy. And the other thing about bananas and coral glows is it's actually a sex-linked gene. So every time you buy a male banana or a coral glow, you definitely want to know if it's a male maker or a female maker. And it's only associated with the males, which is pretty crazy. It's the only gene in ball pythons that is like this. And essentially what it is, if you actually have a banana male maker and you breed it to something else, half the offspring come out as bananas, but all the banana offspring are all males. You'll get no females. And if kind of on the flip side, if you actually had a female maker, they would all be females. And sometimes it can be a pretty challenging project, especially if you're looking to add other genes into some of your offspring and they're all males or all females. And sometimes you actually have a lot of genes tied up in just your males or females and you can't really get them into your banana project. That's kind of one of the frustrations of the banana and the coral glow. So here is the other gene in the black banana, and that is the black pastel. This is a pretty amazing gene actually. So the black pastel is really similar to the cinnamon. A lot of people think they're really close. I think they're definitely two different genes. And usually the black pastel has a little bit more of a coppery color than the cinnamon. Essentially what it is, it's a dark gene. You mix it with some other genes and a lot of times it'll really darken the background of your combinations. And kind of the weird thing is you can actually take a black pastel, you can breed it to a cinnamon and you'll get an 8-ball, which is kind of interesting. It's a completely patternless, almost jet black snake, which is kind of cool. And it almost looks like the same as the super black pastel or the super cinnamon. It can get pretty confusing, especially if you're working 8-ball into other combinations between the black pastel and the cinnamon. So here's what happens if you actually take the black pastel and you work it into the banana. Take a look at this. This is pretty amazing. When I first saw one of these, I couldn't believe how much the black pastel actually transformed the banana, really kind of darkened it. Like it looks like a completely different snake. It's probably one of the only genes that can really almost compete for the visual dominance of the banana, which is pretty interesting. And I actually wanted to show you some combinations that we can actually look at with the black pastel and the banana. But first I wanted to show you you what this looks like as far as an adult. So if you actually look at the snake, you can definitely tell it's a hatchling because there's no freckles in the snake at all. There's, when they're young, they completely transform from when they're young to when they're old. And here is an older one. Take a look at this. I actually pulled this up and it has all these little freckles in the combination. And kind of the weird thing about this combination is it seems like black pastel is one of the few genes that seems to increase the amount of freckles in your bananas. I've never really seen bananas with this many freckles compared to a non-black pastel version of the banana. It's kind of interesting how it really brings a lot of freckles into the combination. So here's the pinstripe. I wanted to show you some of these other genes when we work them into the black banana. You can make some really amazing combinations, really breathtaking as far as the visual appearance. And the pinstripe is definitely one of my favorite genes. Essentially what it is, it's a bright gold snake. It's also a dominant gene, so you take a pinstripe, breed it to something else, half the offspring come out as pinstripe. And usually with the pinstripes, you get a really strong stripe right down the back of the snake. And I'd say usually with a lot of your pinstripe combinations, it's visually dominant as far as the pattern of the pinstripe. You can kind of look at visual dominance a little bit different depending on what genes you have. So for the banana, you have a really strong visual dominance as far as the color being transferred to the combinations that you mix it in with. And usually with a lot of your pinstripe combinations, it'll actually, a lot of the colors will actually overwhelm the gold color, but a lot of times you'll get the stripe down the back and you'll get these little pinstripes coming right down the side of the combinations. So here's what happens if you actually take pinstripe and work it into the black banana. Take a look at this. This was kind of blew me away. I couldn't believe how much of an effect all these genes coming together. It kind of shatters the pattern. And in this case, you can't hardly even tell that the pinstripe is in there. You can see the stripe right down the back, probably kind of a residual from the pinstripe on the back of the snake. You can definitely see the banana, the real yellow color that's pretty typical of the banana. Kind of the interesting thing is if you actually take a look at this pattern, this is kind of the craziest thing that I've ever seen. And I've actually seen a lot of times when you work black pastel into a lot of combinations, it'll have a really strong effect as far as kind of jumbling up the patterns on the side of the snake. And for some reason, when you actually work all these genes together, you get a snake that almost looks like a monsoon. If you've ever seen that gene, it kind of really scrambles it up, similar to this, which is pretty crazy. So here is the orange dream. This is a really popular gene in ball pythons, and it's actually a brightening gene. So a lot of times when you work orange dream into combinations, you end up with a lot more oranges. Sometimes you can make some really bright yellow and orange snakes, working orange dream into a lot of your other brightening genes. And the orange dream, a lot of times it'll actually reduce the patterns, similar to, I'd say, as a matter of fact, you can actually kind of reduce the pattern a little bit with the pastel, a little bit more with the orange dream, and it's kind of an extreme example is Enchi really reduces the pattern. Sometimes these orange dreams can almost look like Enchi is in the mix, although it's just part of the orange dream. And here's what happens if you work orange dream into the black banana. Take a look at this crazy snake. This is one of the wildest snakes that I've actually seen as far as any type of banana combination. You can definitely tell that it has the banana from the yellow color, but you can definitely tell on this one, the black pastel is really darkening the background. Kind of interesting. And then the orange dream, it's weird because sometimes when you actually work black pastel into certain combinations, a lot of times you'll get this streaking on the side, and I think that's just the combination of the black pastel with these other two genes, and it really streaks it out. Usually if you're actually working black pastel into something and you see a bunch of offspring, you're wondering, hey, I wonder if black pastel's in some of my hatchlings. Usually you can definitely tell if you actually have this streaking along the sides. And I've actually seen in certain cases, sometimes you have really extreme kind of a streaking of the pattern, and sometimes you don't have any at all, but you can still have black pastel in the mix. But it really depends on which genes that you mix it in. That is a pretty crazy snake. So here is the pastel. Things get a little bit more interesting when you work pastel into the black banana. So pastel, typically it's a yellow gene. You can see in this case, it actually reduces the pattern a little bit. But kind of the weird thing about the pastel is when you mix it with the black pastel, you actually get the black pewter, which is typically a silver snake. Sometimes they can be really almost like a metallic silver. Sometimes they can be kind of a coppery brown color. But it's pretty interesting if you actually take the combination of the pastel and the black pastel and make the pewter, that is extremely visually dominant. And a lot of times it'll actually trump a lot of other genes as far as the visual appearance. So here's what happens if you take the pastel and you work it into the black banana. Take a look at this snake. This one is pretty interesting. I was kind of blown away by this. Essentially what it is you're actually making the black pewter with the combination of the pastel and the black pastel, which is typically like a silver colored snake, and then you add banana, which is really visually dominant, and you kind of get this struggle between visual dominance, and you get almost like this metallic colored kind of almost like a bronze colored snake, which is pretty amazing as far as the combination of all these genes coming together. All right, so I wanted to show you one more snake here at the end, and that is essentially the same exact snake right here with the addition of one more copy of pastel. And take a look at this. This is kind of interesting. So this is the combination of the super pastel and the black pastel, which is also known as the silver streak. So the silver streak is another silver snake, which is pretty interesting. It's even more visually dominant than the pewter. And you can definitely see on this one, it almost trumps the banana, working that into this combination. And this one's kind of interesting. It's actually listed as a sterling. So this gets a little bit confusing. So essentially what the sterling is the combination of the cinnamon and the super pastel, and the silver streak is the black pastel, and the super pastel gets a little bit confusing. But I'd say probably what happened in this situation is they probably took an 8-ball, which is actually the combination of a black pastel and a cinnamon, and then bred it to make this combination. So this is either a sterling or a silver streak. That's kind of what I'm guessing as far as labeling it as a sterling and then labeling it down here as black pastel. But the combination, it's kind of interesting when you make certain combinations, it really trumps the visual appearance of other genes. And it looks like in this case, you're actually almost trumping the visual appearance of the banana. All right, so it is time for the question of the day. And Snelson2222 asks, what's the best way to rehydrate coconut husk substrate in your snake enclosures? And that is a very good question. So when I actually started out in ball pythons about 5 or 6 years ago, I actually started with one of those little hand pump sprayers that every time you pull the handle, it sprays out a little bit of water. And let me tell you, for the amount of tubs that I have in the really dry Colorado climate here with a really low ambient humidity, it wasn't really practical to actually use one of those tiny little sprayers. And I quickly transitioned over to a pump-up sprayer. I was using a 2-gallon pump-up sprayer, and that worked pretty good. I probably used it for almost a year, and that was pretty awesome. I've actually seen a lot of people that are using them on YouTube videos. Some of the big breeders, they pretty much use those 100%. A lot of people, what they actually do is they hook up automated systems where you actually have the water plumbed in and you kind of have a cord running to a little nozzle. And I was kind of not that advanced. I really don't have any kind of an automated system here. And what I actually transitioned to, I've been using pretty much for the last few years, and that is a watering can. I actually have a little watering can here. Take a look at this. This is a cute little watering can. And let me tell you, I use this a lot. Pretty much every few days I'm using this, and it's really super quick. It saves a lot of time. It holds, I think, about a half gallon or something like that. I picked it up on Amazon. And the cool thing about this is the water comes out really fast. So I can go through all my tubs and I can really add a lot of water to my tubs really quick. And I pretty much have to do that because of my dry climate here in Colorado. If you actually had, you know, like a climate that was like 90% humidity, like Florida or something like that, where you didn't really have to water that much, I would think a pump-up sprayer would probably work just fine. But for me, let me tell you, this watering can is definitely a time saver. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.